thanks for tuning in. In this video I'm going to show you how to plant papaya from fruit to seed all the way to a grown mature plant. So papaya is one of the fastest fruit producing trees out there. So in times of food insecurity, like right now with the COVID-19, a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen, and a lot of people thinking growing their own food for security. Well, papaya will produce that fruit within 1 year. So you have to start with a ripe papaya. This one's obviously overripe and it's already rotting, but instead of throwing this away, we're going to extract the seeds. So start with a ripe or overripe papaya. Do not start with a green papaya fruit because it's not ripe and the seeds won't be ready yet. Okay, so first you're going to open it up. You can use a knife or you can improvise. I'm going to use a shovel. The fruit's really soft. Okay, so I'm just going to carefully slice it in half, just like so. Okay, so as you can see, it's really soft. I'm going to open it up and look at all the wonderful seeds in there. So the mold is just on the outside, it's not inside, but if it did get to the inside, like over here, you just want to discard of these seeds because you want to keep only the best seeds. Okay, next step would be to scoop it onto a plate or something similar to a plate. You can use your fingers. Okay, and the great thing about papaya is that it produces lots of seeds per one fruit, like hundreds of seeds in one fruit. Okay, and of course, if you don't want to use your fingers, you can scoop it out with a spoon, or in this case we're using a gardening shovel, small gardening shovel. Try not to get so much flesh. Okay, so the rest can be composted. Okay, so you can freeze it for later composting, or you can put it in a compost pile. Okay, or you can just dump it around the tree, but heads up, that might attract some pests and stuff like that, so it might look messy and might attract pests if you just throw it. But I'm still gonna do it. I'm just gonna use it as food for the banana tree. We have some banana trees growing over here, so I'm going to use that as food for banana tree. I'm just squeezing the juice into it, and it should disintegrate pretty fast. Okay, I'm gonna do the other half real quick. If there's a little pieces of fruit mixing in with the seeds, it's okay, because you can easily remove it later. And we are going to wash this. Okay, and we're going to sort it, but for now we're just removing the seeds from the papaya. Next step is to put soil in the pots, and if you don't have pots, you can make it out of, in this case we're going to make pots out of the banana tree. I'll be honest with you, that's not a conventional way of doing it, but when you have minimal tools and minimal materials, it's worth a try. Okay? Stick it back in. Make some extra drainage for it by doing an X like this. When it comes to soil, papaya, they don't like wet soil too much. They like fast draining, preferably dry soil. They don't tolerate wet roots. Okay, they start getting root rot, so make sure the soil is well draining. Make sure you don't overwater it, okay, because papayas don't like too much water. They actually prefer dry conditions, sunny, dry conditions. Alright, so now we're going to take these seeds. I'm going to take about just like a few seeds, maybe 3. If you want to conserve the seeds, maybe use 3 per pot just to make sure you have selection. Whichever one is best growing, you will select that one, and you will cut the rest of them out. Okay, you will cut down the rest of them, plant it about 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. Okay, and make sure you leave it in a sunny spot. Make sure it gets plenty of sun, because it does rely on that for germination. This soil is pretty moist, so I'm not going to water it. But if it was completely dry soil, you can water it one time and then just leave it. You can leave it a whole week or so, because you don't want the soil to be wet. You don't want it to be saturated with wetness. Again, papayas don't like that. And give it about a week or so. If you're starting with fresh seeds like I am, it should germinate within a week or so. And once they start to germinate, give it, another week or 2 to see which ones perform best, and save those, and cut down the rest. Cut them down at the base near the soil level. 8 months or so, it should start bearing flowers and fruits. And once the fruit starts to yellow, you can pick it and save the tree, because it will produce for many years. Make sure you use organic fertilizer every now and then, and it will give you the love back. And just pat down the soil so it's nice and tight. And this soil, again, it's moist as well, so I'm not going to water it. Oh, and by the way, I definitely do recommend starting with seeds that came from a fruit that's already nice and sweet and that has ripened really well, because seeds have this ability to remember the fruit that it came from. So it's great to start with a fruit that you know tasted good, and this one was organically grown. It came from organically grown fruit, I believe on the Big Island, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. Okay, and the seeds that you are going to save for later, you want to make sure you rinse them with water. It's nice if you have a strainer. Okay, after you washed it, it's okay if there's a little debris and pieces of the outer skin from the seeds left, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna let it dry out in shade indoors, out of direct sunlight and out of moisture. So dry, shady place. It's okay if it's warm, because it's a tropical, papaya is a tropical plant. Let it completely dry out, and all that debris is gonna dry out and form little skins. And you can basically, after it's dry, you can rub all the seeds together to get rid of any other extra dry skin and stuff like that that's left. I like to actually let the seeds dry out on a piece of cardboard, because what that does is it speeds up the drying process, because the cardboard absorbs the moisture around it. So instead of seeds sitting in a plate where moisture is not really absorbed into the plate, it's good to have the kind of surface that actually absorbs that moisture, because the main point here is to dry the seeds as fast as possible. Spread them out evenly. Make sure they're not sitting on top of each other, or make sure that not too many are touching each other, because that's going to hold the moisture in. But check on them in a few days, And if they're completely dry, you can just basically rub them out of the, if they're a little stuck on the cardboard, just rub them out, get rid of any flakes, and store them in an envelope. Main thing is in the shade, out of the sun, not too hot, not too cold. So, and then you can store it. I usually keep it really simple. I store it inside of envelopes, yeah, in a dark place. But I usually put those envelopes inside of airtight containers. Oh, and one last thing. You see how some of the seeds have a shiny coat around them and others don't? Others have kind of like a spiky. Well, you want to make them, as many of them spiky as possible, because the shiny coat is actually all moisture, and that's not your friend. So ideally, when you rub the seeds through a mesh screen, you want to use pressure to pop those surrounding tissue that's shiny, that skin. You want to pop that to release the moisture, okay? Because the whole point is to dry the seeds out, and that shiny skin is gonna take a while to dry out on its own, so it's best to just pop them as much as possible in the process of washing through the mesh screen. If some of them didn't pop, you can pop them when you're drying them on the cardboard. So you just squeeze it. See, that one just popped. Let's see, let's find another one. This one, for example. See how it's shiny? But I'm going to pop it. See, it just popped, and I released that moisture. So now it's gonna dry a lot faster when it's without that skin. Cool, so it's been about 24 hours and all the seeds are pretty dry, so that's really good. And so when you check that, make sure there's no remaining seeds with those wet surrounding pockets around them. And so as long as all the seeds are dry, you're ready to store it for long term. I prefer to keep it simple. I just use these like 6-inch envelopes, and I label it with what kind of seed it is. In this case, it's papaya seeds. I put Ono just because there's different types out there. This is the Ono brand. I think they have the best tasting commercially available papayas in Hawaii. And then I put the date that these seeds were put in an envelope, so I can keep track of how old they are. Okay, just seal it up. And I usually put these packets inside of like a airtight, light-proof container, such as this. Of course, you can improvise with different kinds of containers that keep the seeds dark and moisture-free. They should be viable in storage for at least a year. So thanks for tuning in, and check us out at organichawaii.org. Aloha.